What if I told you that the ultimate American dream, like paying off your mortgage and owning your home free and clear, is actually a massive financial liability?
Right. It sounds completely backwards, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, we're basically told that it's keeping you from building true wealth.
Yeah, it's kind of financial heresy. We are conditioned from day one, really, to look at a house as the ultimate safety net.
Exactly.
But when we break down the actual mathematical mechanics of cash flow, that safety net is often exactly what keeps people trapped. Like on a treadmill they can't even see.
That is exactly the kind of uncomfortable, totally paradigm-shifting reality we are digging into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everybody.
Glad to be here.
For this deep dive, we're pulling apart the core concepts from Robert Kiyosaki's legendary personal finance book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The mission here is to figure out what exactly the wealthy teach their kids about money that the rest of us just, completely miss.
That's a lot.
It really is.
Yeah.
And to understand it, we have to look at the central contrast of the author's life, right? Growing up with two very different father figures.
Yeah, it's a fascinating natural experiment. You have the so-called poor dad who was highly educated. I mean, he had a PhD, went to Stanford, the University of Chicago.
Right, checking all the traditional boxes.
Exactly. Yet he struggled with money his entire life. And then you have the rich dad who was literally an eighth grade dropout, but he eventually became one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii.
And the craziest part is that the difference wasn't about how much money they were making at their daily jobs. It was entirely about their psychological framework.
Oh, absolutely.
You can hear it perfectly in the language they use. Like, the highly educated dad would say things like, the love of money is the root of all evil. But the rich dad countered with, the lack of money is the root of all evil.
What's fascinating here is that language is basically the operating system of the brain. When you look at how the two men handled financial roadblocks, it's night and day. The poor dad would look at something he wanted and just say, I can't afford it. And that statement is essentially a mental period.
The brain just shuts down.
Exactly. It accepts defeat and goes to sleep. But the rich dad completely refused to let his kids use those words. He insisted they ask, how can I afford it?
Which forces the brain to boot up.
Right.
It turns a roadblock into a puzzle. But, I mean, just changing your vocabulary doesn't magically pay the electric bill.
No, definitely not.
Choosing a mindset is really just the first step. The real world is going to test that mindset immediately. And there's this incredible story from the author's childhood at age 9 that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, the counterfeiting story.
Yes. It starts with a spectacular failure. He and his friend Mike decide they want to, quote unquote, make money. So they go around the neighborhood, collect used lead toothpaste tubes, and literally melt them down over a barbecue.
Right, they're pouring the lead into plaster molds to forge nickels. They took the instruction to make money completely literally.
Yeah, they were running a full-blown counterfeiting operation in the backyard.
Which is hilarious, but yeah, highly illegal.
Right, so the highly educated dad sits them down, explains the illegality of it all, and shuts it down. But Mike's dad, the rich dad, agrees to teach the boys how money actually works.
And he definitely doesn't do it with a chalkboard or a traditional lecture.
Okay, let's unpack this because his method is intense. He puts these 9-year-olds to work in his dusty convenience store, making them dust canned goods for 3 hours every Saturday. And he's paying them a measly 10 cents an hour.
Which was nothing even back then.
Right. And just when the boys are frustrated enough to quit, he does the unthinkable. He cuts their pay to zero. He takes away the paycheck entirely.
Which, seems unnecessarily cruel to a child.
I mean, yeah, it's like being stuck on a treadmill where someone keeps dangling a donut just out of reach. But isn't the rich dad just being a cheapskate here? Like, why torture a 9-year-old?
We have to look at the underlying mechanism he was trying to expose. He was basically building a miniature version of what he called the rat race.
Okay, the rat race.
Yeah. Human beings are primarily driven by two emotions when it comes to money: fear and greed. First, you have the visceral fear of not having money. The fear of not being able to pay bills or buy food. That wakes you up and sends you to work.
Right, it's the engine of the daily grind.
Exactly. But then, the moment you get handed that paycheck, the second emotion kicks in. Desire or greed. You start thinking about all the things money can buy. A nicer car, a vacation, a new TV.
So you spend the money.
You spend it, and then the fear returns, which sends you right back to work. You wake up, go to work, pay bills, over and over. People naturally assume that getting a raise or finding a higher paying job will cure that fear, but it actually doesn't.
Because the desire scales up with the income.
Right.
You make more, so you borrow more to buy a bigger house, which means bigger bills,
Hmm.
and the fear's just right back where it started.
Exactly. So by taking away the 10-cent paycheck entirely, the rich dad was forcing the boys to experience the fear of having nothing, but he was preventing them from soothing that fear with a tiny immediate reward.
He forced them to step off the emotional treadmill,
Right. He made them actually look at the world around them for real opportunities.
and it completely worked. Because they weren't obsessing over their 10 cents anymore, they noticed something happening in the store that they would have completely ignored otherwise.
The comic books.
Yes, they saw the store manager taking unsold comic books, cutting the covers off to return to the distributor for a credit, and throwing the rest of the book away.
They essentially found an invisible asset.
Exactly. So they strike a deal with the distributor to keep the coverless comics, provided they don't resell them, and they open a comic book library in a basement.
It's brilliant.
They charge the neighborhood kids 10 cents admission to come in and read as many comics as they want for 2 hours. They even hired a kid to be the librarian. Suddenly, they were making over $9 a week.
Which was huge money for them.
Right. The business was generating cash flow whether they were physically standing in the basement or not.
They successfully separated their time from their income. But mastering your emotions and spotting opportunities is really only half the battle.
Right. You need the mechanics.
Exactly. If you don't understand the mechanical flow of money, that $9 a week will vanish just as quickly as it arrived. You can have the strongest mindset in the world, but if you cannot read financial numbers, you will eventually end up broke.
Which brings us to the absolute bedrock of this entire philosophy. Rule number 1. And honestly, it is presented as the only rule you actually need to know.
It's very simple.
You must know the absolute difference between an asset and a liability.
Yeah, traditional accounting makes this needlessly complicated with like depreciation schedules and all this confusing jargon.
Yeah.
The framework we are looking at today strips all of that away.
Just focuses on the cash flow.
Right. One single metric, the direction of the cash flow. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That is the entire diagnostic test.
Okay, let's apply that test. Because this is where the framework gets incredibly controversial. The assertion is that your house, the place you live,
Yeah.
is a liability.
Yes, the primary residence.
Wait a minute. Every financial planner, basically every parent, says a home is your greatest investment. How can we look at the listener and say their house is a liability? Where is the money supposedly leaking from if you don't even have a mortgage anymore?
Well, think about the day after you pay off that 30-year mortgage. Does the house magically stop costing you money?
I mean, no, obviously not.
Right. You still have property taxes, which, by the way, often increase every single year. You have homeowners insurance, you have inevitable maintenance, the roof needs replacing, the water heater breaks, the foundation shifts.
Yeah, the joys of home ownership.
And you have utility costs just to keep it habitable. Every single month, money is leaving your pocket just to maintain your baseline existence in that space. So, by the strict definition of cash flow, it is a liability.
But the house goes up in value.
Mm.
Like when you sell it in 20 years, you make a massive profit.
Sure, but capital appreciation is a hope, not a cash flow. Relying on the house to go up in value is speculating. It's not investing. But more importantly, tying up all your capital in a primary residence triggers 3 massive hidden losses.
Okay, walk us through those losses.
For first is the loss of time. If your money is basically trapped in the equity of your drywall, it isn't out in the market compounding and generating passive income over those 20 years.
Right, the money's just sitting there doing nothing until you finally sell.
Exactly. The second is the loss of capital. The money you are forced to spend on this property taxes and roof repairs is capital that could have been used to buy actual income-producing assets.
Makes sense. And the third?
The third loss is the most devastating. It's the loss of financial education.
Explain that one. How does owning a house cost you education?
Well, if all your wealth is tied up in your house, you have no excess capital to invest. And if you have no capital to invest, you never actually learn how to invest. Yeah. You never learn how to analyze a stock, or evaluate a rental property, or structure a business deal. You remain completely financially illiterate. So when you do finally have some extra retirement money later in life, you are terrified.
Because you don't know what you're doing.
Right. So you hand it over to a mutual fund manager because you don't trust yourself to manage risk.
That reframes the entire goal of working, honestly. We usually measure success by our net worth, but the framework uses Buckminster Fuller's definition of wealth.
I love this definition.
Fuller argued that wealth isn't a dollar amount at all. It's a measure of time. Wealth is basically how many days you can survive if you stop working today.
It's the ultimate metric of freedom. You are truly wealthy the moment the passive cash flow from your actual assets exceeds your monthly living expenses. When your investments pay for your life, your time belongs to you.
But, just knowing your house is a liability doesn't actually put money in your pocket. To do that, we have to look at how the rich acquire true assets. And this brings up the concept of minding your own business.
Yes. This is where the distinction between what you do for a living and what you actually own becomes critical. People consistently confuse their profession with their business.
There is an incredible story about Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, that highlights this perfectly.
It's a classic.
He's speaking to a group of MBA students at the University of Texas. Afterwards, they're all having a few drinks, and Kroc asks the students, "What business am I in?" The students laugh. They think it's a joke. They say, "Ray, everyone knows you're in the hamburger business."
And Kroc corrected them immediately. He told them he was not in the hamburger business. His business was real estate.
Right.
The primary focus of McDonald's was selling franchises, yes, but the brilliant underlying strategy was that the franchisee was actually paying to acquire the land under the restaurant for Kroc's organization.
The hamburgers were just the bait.
Exactly. They were simply the mechanism to generate the cash flow needed to buy prime commercial real estate at major intersections all over the world.
So what does this all mean? The profession was making burgers. The business was accumulating real estate. So for you, listening right now, your profession is what you do to earn a paycheck. You might be an engineer, a nurse, a graphic designer. That is your profession.
You are minding your employer's business.
Right. But your own business is your asset column. Think of your profession as the engine that keeps your life moving today. It pays for the groceries and keeps the lights on. But your business, your asset column, is the map that actually gets you to financial independence tomorrow.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, to be clear, the strategy here is not to dramatically quit your day job and become a risky entrepreneur, right?
Not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the recommendation is actually quite conservative. Keep your day job, be an excellent, hardworking employee, but stop taking your leftover income and buying liabilities.
Stop buying stuff that drains your pocket.
Right. Take that excess cash and relentlessly build your asset column. Buy dividend-paying stocks, income-generating rental properties, or build intellectual property. Create a foundation of things that put money in your pocket while you sleep.
And this exposes a glaring behavioral difference between the classes, something the book touches on called the luxury rule.
Yes, this is huge.
The poor and middle class buy luxuries first. They get a promotion, and they immediately finance a luxury car or buy a bigger house on credit just to look successful. They are paying for that luxury with their own sweat and future labor. But the wealthy buy luxuries last.
They delay the gratification until the math actually works in their favor. They use the income from their day job to buy an asset first. Then they wait for that asset to generate cash flow.
And then use that money.
Exactly. They use the cash flow from the asset to buy the luxury car. The asset pays for the reward, not their blood, sweat, and tears.
Okay, so you keep your job, you start funneling money into assets, and you delay your luxuries. Sounds great. But the moment you start building real wealth, you hit a massive wall. Taxes. The harder you work, the more the government takes. This takes us into the deeper game of how the rich protect and exponentially grow what they build.
The history of taxation is often really misunderstood. The framework explores what it calls the Robin Hood myth.
Right, take from the rich.
Yeah. When income taxes were first introduced in England and America, they weren't aimed at everyone. They were sold to the public as a way to punish the rich. The pitch was, take from the wealthy elite and use it to benefit the masses.
Which was incredibly popular, obviously. People voted for it enthusiastically. And just to be clear, we're just reporting the mechanics here from the text, not taking any political stance.
Right, just looking at the history.
The reality is that government spending naturally expands. The appetite for capital grew so large that the tax burden eventually trickled all the way down to the middle class and the poor, the exact people who initially voted for it.
And the wealthy, well, they didn't just sit back and surrender their wealth. They understood the legal framework and they completely changed their strategy. They utilized the corporate shield.
Okay, explain how a corporation actually protects you. Because most people just hear the word corporation and think of, like, giant skyscrapers and boardrooms. How does the math actually look for an individual?
Think of personal income as a bucket with holes in the bottom. As an employee, you earn a salary, but before that money ever hits your bank account, the government takes its share through payroll and income taxes.
Right.
You only get to drink the water that's left in the bucket after taxes. You pay taxes first and try to live on what's left.
It hurts every time you look at the gross pay versus the net pay on your stub.
Exactly. But a corporation flips the bucket entirely. A corporation earns money, but it is legally allowed to pay its business expenses before it pays taxes.
That's a massive difference.
It is. You can pay for business travel, equipment, health insurance, and marketing with pre-tax dollars. The corporation gets to drink its fill first, and the government only gets to tax the little drops left at the very bottom. It is a fundamental legal inversion of how money flows.
And the rich don't just use these rules to protect their money. Here's where it gets really interesting. They use them to literally invent money out of thin air.
Yes, the real estate example.
There is a staggering example of this in the text regarding a $60,000 house. So the author is looking at a depressed real estate market. Everyone is panicking and selling. He finds a house worth $75,000, but the owner is desperate and agrees to sell it for $20,000.
Which is a massive discount, completely driven by market fear.
Exactly. But he doesn't use his own money. He borrows $2,000 from a friend to use as a down payment. So his own capital in the deal is essentially zero.
Zero risk of his own money.
Right. While the paperwork is processing, he places a newspaper ad selling the house for $60,000 with the key phrase, "no money down." Buyers who can't qualify for traditional bank loans absolutely flock to the ad. He sells it instantly.
Now, let's break down the exact mechanics of that sale, because he didn't just hand over the keys for a briefcase full of cash. He used seller financing. He became the bank.
Yes. Walk us through how a promissory note actually works here.
Instead of the new buyer going to Chase Bank to get a mortgage, they sign a legal document, a promissory note, agreeing to pay the author $60,000 plus 10% interest over time.
Okay.
The author takes the buyer's first monthly payments, pays off the original $20,000 debt for the house, pays his friend back the $2,000 with a little interest, and suddenly he holds a piece of paper that guarantees him a steady stream of income for years.
He created a $40,000 asset, the promissory note, literally out of thin air. He didn't swing a hammer. He didn't use his own money. He just used agreements.
It's pure financial intelligence.
But I have to push back on behalf of anyone listening right now. Isn't this incredibly risky? Not everyone is built to just whip up real estate contracts, borrow money, and play bank. It sounds terrifying.
Oh, it is absolutely terrifying if you don't have the financial education to support it, but risk is often just a symptom of not knowing what you were doing.
That's a good point.
To execute a deal like that, the author had to rely on the 4 pillars of financial intelligence. First, accounting. He had to be able to read the numbers to know a $20,000 purchase against a $60,000 note was mathematically viable.
Right.
Second, investing, understanding the actual mechanics of how a promissory note yields interest. Third, understanding markets, recognizing a depressed market where sellers are desperate, but buyers are hungry for easy terms.
And the fourth.
The law, knowing how to legally structure a corporate entity and a binding real estate contract to protect himself.
So the education actually removes the risk.
Precisely. The framework argues that blindly handing your retirement over to a fund manager to put in quote-unquote safe mutual funds is actually the riskiest move you can make.
Because you have no control.
Exactly. You have surrendered all control. You are basically a passenger hoping the driver doesn't crash. The wealthy don't buy packaged investments off the shelf. They assemble the pieces themselves, and they manage the risk through their own intelligence.
Wow. We have covered some intense ground today. Let's briefly recap this journey. We started by looking at how our earliest vocabulary shapes our financial reality. The difference between I can't and how can I.
Right, mindset shift.
Then we examined the vicious psychological cycle of fear and greed that keeps people trapped in the rat race. We broke down the non-negotiable definition of an asset versus a liability and confronted the really uncomfortable truth about why our houses might actually be draining our wealth.
The cash flow test.
Yes. Finally, we explored how the rich separate their profession from their business and use corporate structures and financial literacy to invent assets out of thin air.
And if there's one final critical piece of context to add, it's really about how we view failure.
Oh, yeah.
In the traditional school system, making a mistake means you failed the test. You are penalized. But in reality, human beings are designed to learn by falling down.
We don't learn to walk by reading a textbook.
Exactly. You learn by standing up, falling, scraping your knee, and adjusting your balance. The same applies to financial intelligence. You build wealth by taking calculated actions, making mistakes, course correcting, and moving forward without the paralyzing fear of being wrong.
You have to be willing to scrape your financial knees. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As you go back to your day, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
The core lesson here is that the rich invent money through contracts, agreements, and a deep understanding of the rules. If money is truly just an agreed-upon illusion, as the rich dad claims, then what limiting agreements have you silently made with yourself about your own earning potential? And more importantly, what happens if you decide to tear up that contract and renegotiate those terms today?